Real quick, David, I need you to unmute.
Oh, we were muted, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Shirley, have you the opportunity to call the roll?
I have taken roll. Everybody is present, but Doyle Riley, he will be absent tonight, and you do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda then is the oath of office for Mr. Porter.
You don't have to stand, you can stay seated if you want to. Do you, Kent Porter, solemnly swear that you possess all the qualifications of the office of Planning and Zoning Commissioner as prescribed by law, that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Missouri, the provisions of all laws of this state affecting cities of this class, and the ordinances of the city of Kearney, Missouri, and faithfully demean yourself in office?
I will.
You'll sign that for me, please.
Here you are.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of minutes from July 14th meeting. Any commission discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item then is new business. The first one is the Greenfield Pond on Tract A, P District Planned Amendment. David, do you have a staff?
Yes, I'll give some staff comments. GJN Development, who is represented here tonight by Garrett Seiler, who's in the audience, is working on revisions to the Meadows Greenfield 7th Plat engineering plans. If you remember, a month or two ago, that was the final plat that came through. It's located kind of at the southwest side of the subdivision. In fact, if I can share screen, I might just go to Google Earth map, and I can point out some things while I talk. So this is the Greenfield subdivision. Meadows Greenfield 7th Plat is in this area here along the Fishing River Trail. As part of their review, the city engineer recommended modifications be made to the lower Greenfield Pond, which is here. The Greenfield lift station's at this location. It's the pond that's at the south end of the subdivision by the neighborhood pool. Drainage from that lower pond travels east under 33 Highway through River Meadows and then into the Fishing River out by the sewer plant property. The revised plans that were submitted by the engineer for GJM Development, rather than propose some modifications to this existing pond, as per comments from our city engineer, they proposed another option, that being a new proposed pond in this area of the subdivision here, adjacent to Greenfield First Plat. This is Prairie Creek Drive. This northwest, from east to northwest street is Old Trail Run. This pond would pocket up in this location here. The idea being to intercept water from the north before it gets into the lower pond, offsetting some of that water, so then it would work better than it does today, rather than do modifications specifically down at that pond. Because they are proposing a pond that is not shown on the approved 2005 approved P development plan, we have to go through a plan amendment process. That development plan identifies the existing pond at the, I would call it the lower pond or the lift station pond. It also identifies another pond to the east as well. It does not show the proposed pond. In 2016, we did go through a plan amendment process, just like we are today, for this pond located as, it was constructed as part of the Phase 3 development, which includes most of Foxtail Drive, the cul-de-sacs that come off of there, and then Fifth Plat, which is the villas along Greenfield Point. Made sense to approve that pond because there were several new houses being constructed, and they were creating additional runoff that made sense to collect before it runs downstream. And as part of this plan, Greenfield 7th Plat, located along Fishing River Trail, primarily drains to the west and to the southwest directly into Fishing River, directly into the Fishing River. Not very much, very little of it goes to the east and into that existing pond. Because of that, and because it's in a different drainage area than the proposed pond, staff didn't feel that we could recommend approval of this proposed pond, and so we couldn't do that. There's no real direct benefit, I would say, to the people in the first plat or to those areas further to the north. It does help the subdivision drainage overall. It does help probably the future phases, but it doesn't help those areas to the north. It's already developed, pretty much developed out at this point in time. Again, staff did not recommend approval of this pond at this time. If P&Z were to approve a plan amendment, then staff would recommend that if you did that, include staff condition that approval of plans or engineering report by the city engineer. The study that they prepared for this pond and for the engineering plans that was submitted hasn't been fully reviewed yet. We got it last week on Wednesday. Just our engineers haven't had time to fully go through that. And then 2, development of the project in compliance with all city codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees and taxes, which is a standard condition that we always attach to approvals. This application before the Board of Aldermen next week. Public notice has been posted just like it did for tonight. And again, we have a public hearing tonight that you'll want to open up. We do have people in the audience, I think, here for this case. I believe there are probably some people in the audience online as well. So we'll want to recognize people in the audience and then also online. Doesn't matter which order, if you want to do online first or second, but we will want to recognize them as well.
Okay.
I'm going to quit sharing at this point.
Okay.
If we need to, we can always go back and share if we need to.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. If you're here in the audience and you'd like to step up to the podium and speak, state your name and address for the record, and we're happy to hear you.
Good evening.
Yeah, actually, probably, I should have said something. Probably should let the applicants here. They probably ought to have a chance to address.
Absolutely.
And then we open the,
Okay, that's
the hearing. They may have comments to add to the staff comment.
okay, sure.
Oh, okay.
It's just a quick little exhibits on there.
See if I've got a place to. I'm gonna have to unplug something.
Just open up here.
What's that?
It'd be nice to have what's on there.
Yeah, let me see. I think I can. Let's try this one. If I can fit it. Hopefully I didn't screw up something too much.
We'll just ignore it.
Oh, we can get it.
The PowerPoint one.
PowerPoint, right here?
Yep.
Okay. Actually, I was going to download it. I don't know what I unplugged. That's what I worry about. Oh, I unplugged my keyboard. We're good. We're good. Okay. And do you mind if I share real quick?
You can share it, yep. It's only got a couple slides in it.
I can get to the right spot. Here we go. Share
Well, I'll
screen.
start while he's, I'm Julie Sellers. I'm the project engineer with Olson, who is actually working on this project with the developer. And just wanted to kind of present a little bit of what's got us to the point where we are today. So if you know Meadows of Greenfield, David did a great job showing the history. We've dug into the storm study, trying to figure out what was going on, because part of our condition for approval is we had to do a storm study out here, and we ran into some issues with the existing detention, and found out the area was not working as it is currently stands today, that the ponds and other areas were undersized. We started looking back into the development, and if you, next slide, when you look into the overall master planning for this development initially, it actually showed a proposed pond in this area where we're presenting one today, which then we started digging back into the other stuff to figure out why it was never built. Why it wasn't built, we aren't really sure, different developer at that moment. But today we are trying to present to build this pond to help relieve the issues, because what has gone on is, since that pond was never built, they sent all the stormwater down to the lower pond, and now we can't send our stormwater for the future development phases to this lower pond as it was planned. With that, that's pretty much the big picture. With that, there is an existing culvert that goes under the road right there, and there has been some complaints about that and the sogginess of that area. And when we started looking at modeling this existing pond up there, that actually is gonna really help decrease the amount of water that is going to this pond, to where it's gonna help relieve a lot of issues, because we're gonna be detaining upstream of it where it was proposed. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So this is kind of just, I think this was in packets, but this is just the pond that we're proposing where it is. We're not really building a big, huge berm out here. It's smaller than the existing pond that's out there in the same area that went in 2016. The dam configuration is very similar. The one big difference is we're designing this with an outfall structure, to where the 100-year is not going to be overtopping the spillway or anything. It's all contained inside the pond. And then we will have an emergency spillway on it for those large act of God, something of type rain events, as people call them, that would be for that emergency spillway. But the normal rain events will not be going through that spillway of any sort.
Where's the spillway then drain?
Next slide.
Glad I could help.
No, you're good. You opened it up. So this is kind of the current proposed draining. There is a natural low spot that kind of follows that red line through there. That is the natural drainage ditch. That spillway, there will be a defined outfall structure that discharges right at that red spot. We will define a grading path for it in final engineering plans to make sure it's all good. But that is the natural low, and it will all drain to that road culvert that is got issues as it stands today, because there's too much water really coming to it in the existing because of this. So that's kind of what led us to, instead of improving the downstream pond, like the city comment said, going to this upstream pond, because the old data showed it out there. It was never built. The developer was willing to build it and help improve some conditions out there, and that's what led us here today. If you guys have any other questions about it, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you.
What's in that existing area right now? Are we having a lot of problems with water standing in there?
It's kind of marshy in spots. It's pretty open space. It depends on who you talk to, probably. There's pockets a little bit here and there. There has been complaints to the developer from homeowners in that area off and on, with some pictures that showed water standing around there and things like that.
Is it affecting any of the homes in that area right now?
I would not say it's like in the houses, no. I think it's just a perspective of people see the water. They don't like, standing water. It's mosquitoes, it's other things when you have small pockets of it. It's more the overall stormwater management of the development, and that this pond really helps the functioning of that, the overall development, is why we're presenting to install it now.
I have a question.
Okay.
I couldn't tell from your drawing there, you're not proposing piping that from all the way down to?
No, we would have a defined outfall from the pond with a box and a pipe coming out of the pond, so that in small rain events, it comes out of the pond and doesn't go over a spillway. But from there, it would be in a just defined channel that we would make sure is cleaned up out there to define it all the way down to the culvert.
Like a gravel type thing?
Usually they're grass. You don't really need a big gravel, just a grass channel, but a defined low spot that they can follow, and depending slopes and things, so we would look at that.
Okay.
Did you say there was a natural ditch down through there anyway that
There's
it'd be going through?
yes, there is a natural little V kind of channel through there that's kind of weavers in and out. The existing pond spillway does go down through there, and we'd be following a similar path to that.
Is that, we've got the Google
can
Earth,
kind
I
of
think
see
it
it.
follows
Yep.
along here.
You can kind of see it right there, existingly. So we are proposing the other pond that's back in there that was shown on that
Yeah, so-
old master rendering.
So the other pond would fit up here,
Yes,
and
correct.
there'd be another
and
channel
it's very
here.
similar in construction to the existing pond. It's a little smaller in size, but dam is not very tall. We're digging it down into the ground. And the big difference is we're putting in a defined outfall structure instead of using the spillway in small rain events, so.
And the north pond uses the same ditch to drain?
It does go down that same area, yes. But all the existing water, I mean, what's coming out of our pond is existing water that is being detained through there now. So we would actually we're slowing down the water that comes down to that culvert because we're now detaining it. So it's not gonna all reach at the same time, so. We reduced the culvert by over, at the crossing, it reduces the stormwater peak of 100 CFS, which is pretty significant. It's a pretty big watershed, but it reduces it by a third of what's currently going there.
Who's gonna be in charge of the maintenance of that pond along with the other one? Is that the city or is that the homeowner association?
HOA.
Joy.
The existing ones out there are all HOA.
If this pond is not approved, what modifications are made on the other one that's below it?
That's kind of a problematic question. The modifications on the existing one, it wasn't designed to really be modified too much, because if you start modifying it, you're raising a dam, which is then impacting the upstream homeowner to the side of it, because you're creating higher ponding water elevation out there, and there's future road crossings. So you'd be looking at digging it bigger somehow, but the master plan out there wasn't really, and by doing it, you're not really helping improve any of the other stormwater conditions in that existing area either. But, it would be better to put in the other pond to detain that water that's upstream than to try to modify that other pond.
Now, the pond you're proposing, will it have standing water in it 90% of the time?
Yeah, it's gonna have a normal pool elevation, so it'll be a amenity for the development. It will have significant water that can keep fish or other things in it, and then it will also be used to, as stormwater management. So it will have a normal pool in it.
Approximately how deep is that gonna be?
The pond itself, for good pond health, you want them to be fairly decent depth. You want over 6 feet. It's about 10, 12 feet deep in majority of it, and the normal pool elevation is very similar to the ground as it stands currently. We're digging it down. We're not building up a dam. We're keeping the normal pool away from the houses and everything. We are building slight dam, but it's more for the smaller, it's for the 100-year, the stormwater management that will be released in detention aspects. It's not for the normal pool elevations on it. Anything else?
Currently, that's just in the open space.
Right now, it stands as open space. Like I said, that old master rendering did show the pond. Some of the really old storm studies showed it there. It never made it into anything for the city records, however, and that's what brought us here today with it.
I think just for a point of clarification, and you can help me out on this, but, that all got changed to natural prairie grass. Everybody wanted that back there, and then we discovered that that was not a good idea. They did not like what you had to do with natural prairie grass, which was burn it every year. So, that was not a good idea.
Well, we're not presenting that.
So we're not doing that anymore. That's what I was just helping Paul out with.
Yeah, I appreciate that,
I'm
yeah.
the history guy on this, place, so.
And he's right.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now we'll open up the hearing portion of this. Again, if you would like to speak, if you're in the audience here in the building, go ahead and stand at the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Try this again. My name's Jeff Spencer, live at 2208 Prairie Creek Drive, which is lot 45. David, can I ask you to bring up that, picture that shows the drainage and?
Like the Google Earth, will
Perfect.
that work?
That's perfect. I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I do them every
Yeah, I
day,
need a
all day long. I didn't need another one. But I wished I'd have brought my, laser pointer now, because it would make it easier. I appreciate.
And I can, if you want, we've got a pointer there.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I'll feel right at home with that. Look at that. I'm in. Thank you. I was asked by my wife to be brief, and I think most of you in the room know her. I've been married to her for 45-plus years. I know her pretty well. She is in charge, and I'm good with that. But I have as much invested in this property as she does. And I was in town tonight, and I would have canceled any plane flights anyway to be here because this is important to me. I bought my lot approximately 7 years ago, well, over 7 years ago. Don Laffey built my home, and the reason we bought that lot and paid a lot of extra money to be backed up to the prairie. I live on Prairie Creek Drive. And we moved from another area in Kearney. We moved out there, one, so Jerry could stay within her district. Two, we love the area, drove by it all the time. And three, it's been a great neighborhood. We got great neighbors. Several are here tonight. I've seen the 100-year rain event 4 times since I've been there, okay? I know.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Can you show me on there exactly which lot 45 is?
Actually, the hand was on it already.
The hand is on it.
It's on it? Okay.
Right there,
Oh.
right there.
I was looking.
I did, yeah, it was there.
It's right there.
There it is.
All right, I got
The
it.
second house on the end. We love it out there. We love the neighborhood. We like a lot of what Garrett's been doing and the business that he's done out there. And they built some beautiful homes and brought a lot of nice families to the neighborhood. I was opposed to the first pond. And the reason I was opposed for it, because I know where that water goes. And it goes right to my backyard. There is a natural spillway there. And the pond is great. And I don't have a problem with the pond. It has a fountain in it, and it looks nice, and it's not next to my house, so that's okay, so everybody else can have the mosquitoes. But when it rains, that pond is full. Now, if we don't get any rain for 6 weeks here, 8 weeks here, of course, it's down a little bit, and then we get rains, it fills up, and then you get another rain, and it's running right out. It's a rushing river. I've seen that natural spillway 20 feet wide and running fast. I've seen that water in my backyard. It's never been in my house. It's almost been the house of my neighbor who's here tonight. And they have made changes in their yard and put in drainage. When I built my home, we have a low backyard, and we knew it was gonna be. I'm not blaming anybody for that, okay? So we went to Kretzinger, if I have the name pronounced right, it's been a few years, who used to own the development, and said, I wanna put a French drain in my backyard from the north end of my property to the south end of my property, and I'd like to run it out to that natural spillway. He said, absolutely. And so Don came back out, because he had to guarantee that, and he put it in for me. And it works pretty well, and it does take care of the low water. And when the water is really rushing, it'll back up into there, and I know that, but as soon as the water quits rushing, it goes out. So my understanding on this proposal is we're gonna bring trucks right between this, oh, this isn't showing up on your screen. Can I step up to the screen? Is that?
Or do you want me to point?
Truck, yep, right there.
I think I can follow you.
Okay, so to the left, right there, my understanding in that, common property, we're gonna bring trucks right from there, through the trees that are no longer gonna be there, and move that dirt from there. The trees, and I will argue this till, long time, slow down that water. I have people that know in this business. I have a son that's an architect and has done this a lot. He's been there. He's seen it. It does slow down. If we take those trees out, which is what I hear is part of the proposal, is all those, and those are natural trees, because the big trees that we did have back there on that prairie got taken down for that pond, and they got graded away. And they were nice big oak trees and maple trees, et cetera. And the little trees that they put back in that lasted 3 to 6 months, and trees are expensive, I'm in that business, are gone. So we lost those trees. And so we have natural trees that have come up, a lot of willows and stuff in that area, because it's wet, coming down. And they're finally where we're not seeing everybody's kitchen and bathroom and everything else out the back. And I'd hate to see those go away, but I do really believe it slows that water down. I watch it, okay? When we get a 5 and 6 inch rain, and then 3 days later we get another 4 or 5 inch rain, which everybody that lives here knows we get those. That is a river. And I've seen it to where that spillway going underneath Old Trail Run is full. There's no more place for that water to go. My concern with this one is two, and I could be wrong, this is information that's been told to me. Jay Bettis, which I think most of us in the room know Jay, when he was with the city, he was out there one day looking at stuff, and I asked him about the low water here. He said, well, part of your problem here, Jeff, is there's an underground drainage pipe, and I'm gonna say concrete, I don't probably have the right term for that. That's culvert, thank you, that's buried in gravel. And it runs right behind your house, right behind Gary's house next door, right behind David's house to my north, right behind, I believe, Mr. Hank's house, the next house up. And it's buried in gravel, and it's a natural waterway underground, and that's why there's a lot of water there. And when we do have a lot of rain, there can be some standing water. There's some low areas, it's not a perfectly manicured area, it's a prairie. But my concern with this pond going in, one, is the mosquitoes. Two, the homeowners association is gonna then be responsible for another fountain and the costs and things that go with that, but there's costs with everything. And as we've heard, it is up to the homeowners association to take care of this after it's built. It's not gonna help the people that live there. When I looked at this property, there was no other pond shown to me. There was no first pond showed to me. Mr. Kretzinger showed me the plats of this land, and I went around and drove around and looked at lots, and I almost bought several other lots, and we determined this was the one we wanted, because it backed up to this property, or the prairie. And so I was a little concerned with the first one, like I said. The other thing I understand, and whether, again, this is true or not, this is, if you have conversations with people that have been around a long time, that it was either the Department of Conservation or Department of Natural Resources that Kretzinger and the developers went to get that designated as prairie. I understand burning a prairie. I've drove through Kansas, through the Flint Hills many times when they're burning the prairie off. And I understand we don't burn that today, and it gets mowed. But we had to go to the state for that. How does that change when we put another pond in? I don't know what the law is there. I don't know the exact wording there. I'm naive in that area. But I remember these conversations with people. And so I think that's something we need to look into. If there is something we did to get this designation, and we're gonna go in and change it, I don't know if that's right or wrong. This pond is gonna get built up based on what was sent out to some of us, and I have all these pictures here in print, and the 250-some page report that I can honestly say I have not read the whole thing. I actually have a job, and I don't have time to read 260-page reports besides my own, and I haven't got through it all. I will, and so that pond is gonna be raised up on its south side, southwest side. I understand 5 to 6 feet above where the ground is today, and that pond will fill up with water. And when we get these big rains, it's gonna come flying over, just like the current pond. And then you're gonna add water from where it exits out of its spillway to a natural creek, maybe is the word I'll use, down to where it goes under Old Trail Run. And we're gonna add more water to it because it's not gonna be being sucked up by the ground that's up there. And I know every rooftop that goes in and every street that goes in creates runoff, because there's less ground for it to be absorbed into. That's just the natural way when you build, and I understand that. But we're changing to fix something on a plat that is 7 plats later, that I can't believe all this got approved to begin with. If this was a problem, this was not put in initially. I'd hate to even see the existing pond down there by the pool, which is, 2 houses and a lot away from my house, change. But if that's where the original deal was, to create more storm runoff and another pond between it and 33 Highway, and that was what was proposed initially, maybe that's a better choice. I don't know that. But I will say I'm disappointed. I understand what Mr. Seiler's trying to do, and he's in business, and he's trying to do what he thinks is the right thing. I'm a homeowner there. I'm trying to do what I think is the right thing for my investment, which is, big money. That is a free house sitting there. And where I plan to retire. And as I tell my wife, get stuffed and put out on the deck one day, in a joking manner there. I love it there, and I hate to see it change, because that's not what I bought. And I paid extra for that, to have a lot backing up to a prairie, and if we're gonna take that away, I guess I'd like to have my difference back, which will never happen. But I am I guess disappointed, and I don't see where it's gonna help the runoff. If anybody wants to come out and stand in my backyard and walk around and see that land, I'll be glad to show it to you, without a problem. I just think it's gonna create more water, which is what the pond we added 5-6 years ago has done. It's fine in a normal rain. When you get those heavy rains, it comes flying out of that pond. And it's just, it's gonna go somewhere. And it's gonna come right down there. We're gonna add to that, and I think that's a problem. If we take out all the trees, there's nothing there to stop it, slow it down. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want a gravel pit drains up to the back of this prairie. That's not what we signed up for. And if that's what it's gonna turn into, I may make a choice and just move, which is what I hate to do, because I built my forever home right there. And, if that's what it comes to, that's what it comes to, but I'd be disappointed that we get to that point. So, that's what I have to say. I'm passionate about this, because I got a lot of money invested here, and I like what I bought for a piece of property. I love Kearney. We've been here for 30-some years. 2 of my kids live here in town. I have 3 granddaughters that live here in town, and they love coming out in my backyard playing and stuff like that. That's not gonna help that at all. So with that, if you have a question for me, otherwise I've talked too much, my wife will say, and I'll go sit back down. Thank you.
My name's Dave Hink, and I live at 2202 Prairie Creek Drive. And if you pull up that map again,
You wanna look at that aerial again?
if you wanna see where my house is, it's the second, from the street that branches off to the right there on the second house, 2 more down. Keep coming.
Down, right here?
1 more, that one, right there. So it's pretty much, I mean, what's gonna be built is pretty much directly behind my house. And I mean, city needs drainage, retention. I know water runoff is important. I would echo, you know, what he said. When we bought, we built in 2004, and Model Row was right at the entrance, and we picked this lot all the way down here, and we're one of the first houses built, down the street. And I, you know, selected it because it was the deepest part of the prairie, and that's just why we bought it. And so I would hate to see a change, but I understand, you know, we need drainage, you know, built and to help everybody else. I don't have any water issues at all, right now, and I know the 2 neighbors. I don't think they have any, you know, water issues whatsoever. It's a pretty gradual sloping from the north to the south, and, I mean, that's pretty much what I could say. I'll keep it short, but I would echo what he said. I prefer the prairie, but you guys have a tough job, and I know you gotta do what's best for everybody, and I appreciate your all service too, so. But I'd prefer to see it stay prairie grass. That's kind of what we paid for as well, and, but I'm a little concerned about bugs, so, anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else in the,
My name is Shawn Warfield, and I live at 2210 Prairie Creek Drive, and I am the last one on the right side. And David, I don't know, is it possible to show my 30-second video?
Yep, I put it on this.
I don't know if everybody's seen it.
Thought you might.
The lady who spoke was talking about how people see water and freak out. Well, this is my backyard, which is very concerning to me. So that's my sense. This isn't even like the eclipse rain. This is my house. My husband put in the stone right there with the French drain underneath, because when we had the eclipse, we had put sandbags up so our basement didn't flood. That's one video. I've sent Jim Eldridge many. There's the creek, if you can see how heavy the creek is, how wide the creek is right there. So that's my fear. I mean, I love rain, I love listening to it, but currently in the middle of the night, if we have a heavy rain, I wake up in the middle of the night to go look at my yard, because I want to make sure it's not on my patio. What my husband did definitely helped the patio, but as you can see, my yard is just flooded. So I love the idea of something that's going to retain more water. My concern is when it can't retain the water, where that's gonna go. And I understand there's a pipe that's gonna come down and it's gonna lead to the creek, which is just a small ditch, as you can see. that water, if that's a rain right now, and that's taking the overflow from down the hill and from the one creek, I can't imagine what another pond is going to contribute to that creek. There's no way that's not gonna crest the hill and come in my yard. And it already, I don't think Trevor's here, but he lives on the other side of the creek, and it already comes up to the corner of his yard when we get a heavy rain. So I've lived there 4 years, and like Jeff had said, we haven't hit the 100-year rain thing, and we have water like this in our yard a lot. So I love the idea of retaining water, very nervous about it adding more water up the hill and what that's gonna do. And even with a dam, if it's still gonna come down to that creek, or if the dam overflows, my house will be flooded. I am not in a flood zone. I had talked to Jim Eldridge about that after we moved in and had a bunch of water in our yard. We still have to buy flood insurance because I'm not gonna take a chance. You see what it's got right there. So it's just very scary for us. And I don't know, I'm assuming those 2 ponds aren't gonna connect. They're just both gonna run into the creek. Is that correct? Okay. So that was one of my questions about it. Okay.
There would be divine grading that would occur
Okay.
out there to make sure it gets away from everyone's house.
Okay, and if this does pass, is there going to be, is anything gonna be done with the creek to deepen it to allow for more water?
What we would do is, we're still working on final engineering, we've got the pond design, but we would look, after comments tonight too, we would look at coming out from both ponds and where they're going and make sure there's a defined channel to get all of it down to that road crossing in
Because
there.
that natural spot where it's normally going to, that's just gonna,
It's a pinch point, right?
yeah, and it doesn't, that natural spot that it's going to, I don't feel like that's even getting in the creek. It's just, as you notice, the last 4 years, we have seen it get wider and wider, up higher and higher up the creek. And that's very scary when you live at the bottom of the hill. I was told by somebody that we didn't build the house, but our builder never should have been allowed to build a walkout, for our house, which we didn't know. But, that was brought up by somebody from the city. So, it just increases our risk. But those were some of my biggest concerns. Love the idea of trying to fix the problem so not everything's rolling downhill, towards our houses. But, it just scares me to think about adding another 10 to 12 feet of water up the hill. That's all I have.
Thank you.
We do that too online if there are.
Is there anyone else in the building that would like to speak on this issue?
Is there anyone on Zoom that'd like to speak, or?
Yes.
Is it okay if we let them speak?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kathy, may I make just another comment, please?
Real quick.
Yeah, real quick. If, in the event that we put this bond in, can I ask that they remove the dirt up to the north? There's a lot of empty lots there that houses are not on, and not drive between, my house, neighbor's house, and right across the pond. It's a pretty tight area. Does the dirt have to be removed in that direction, across the current, spillway, out, to Old Trail Run? Could it go a little bit north and west? I don't think there's any difference in distance, and take the dirt out that way. I would like to add it. And I want to say thanks for the video. We've all looked at that a bunch of times. And that was my backyard at the very beginning, so there we are. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, David, if you want to.
Yeah, we have 2 names. There's Don and David Wharton. I think I saw Don's hand raised first early on.
Don, if you would like to speak, unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, please. Don?
Maybe we can switch to David Wharton then.
Okay. Mr. Wharton, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, this is David Wharton. My address is 2206 Prairie Creek Drive. I am at lot number 44 on the map. So that is 1 lot north of Mr. Spencer, 2 lots north of Ms. Warfield. I would like to echo Mr. Spencer's statements by and large. Really isn't anything that he said that I disagree with, so I will try not to duplicate what he said. But there are a few things that I would like to add. First of all, this Tract A of the Greenway, this is the Homeowners Association property. This is not developer-owned property. The developer still has control of the HOA because of the number of undeveloped lots, but this is HOA-owned land. So we need to make sure that the HOA is being appropriately compensated if you would allow the developer, GJM, to go forward with this development. We understand there's going to be a significant amount of dirt excavated to create the pond. And a question that I had as to why they're putting the pond in, first and foremost, it seems like it's for the dirt. And secondly, it's for flood protection or for stormwater retention. It was specifically said in an email to me that it is not for looks. Well, all of us who live around the pond will be looking at it every day, multiple times per day. So looks are very important to us. So I would like to see the appropriate, requirements put on your approval, if you would approve this, so that it is put in a way that is, pleasant to the surrounding homeowners. Set aside the cost of the dirt that he's saving instead of trucking in dirt for his lower development down in the farm fields that they need to build up for the road bases. What is the cost of that dirt? Put that into an account within the HOA that we can use for maintenance of the pond going forward. Another condition would be to make sure that they're required to put in an aeration fountain pump so that there is no stagnant water in this pond, that the pond is flowing. That will help. It's not going to alleviate the mosquitoes that will be brought to our backyards, but it will help. It will also help prevent algae and other buildup. So we would like that requirement, an electrical line put in, and that as long as the developer is in control, that they would be responsible for maintaining the pump in the pond and the electricity costs associated with that pump. Because this is for the developer's benefit. This is going to allow the developer to continue to build to the south of us. This is not, with maybe the exception of Ms. Warfield and Trevor, provide a lot of benefit to the rest of us, including the hundreds of homes in the HOA that already exist. So from a cost standpoint, when there's only a few of us immediately around the pond, I'm concerned that people may not want to maintain it because it's not in their backyard. Well, it is in our backyard, and that's why we're concerned, and that's why those of us who back to it have spoken to you this evening, and it's something that we're pretty passionate and concerned about because it's one of our larger investments, if not maybe our largest, and it's something that we want to maintain and preserve appropriately. Plus, this is something that we were promised. There's actually still 2 signs in the development if you drive around. The signs say native grassland. Over 30 acres have been reserved in Greenfield for the preservation and enjoyment of native grasslands. Well, maybe it's just fescue and bluegrass now because we have to mow it. It never made sense, and I'm not asking that it be burned and returned to native prairie grass. But these greenways are very nice, and I would hate to see it continue to be ruined by adding additional ponds. My other question would be is what keeps this pond from being the last? There's room to the south of us between this proposed pond and the existing pond to the west to put in a third pond. I mean, where does it stop? This is Greenfield. This is not Pond Field. And I think it's very important to look at what the owners, the property owners in Greenfield were promised and what we have now versus what the future holds. And from a development standpoint, as a planning and zoning board and as a city, are you willing to go back on your residents and change plans that have already been finally approved just to benefit the developer so that he can most efficiently build additional homes instead of expanding? What they could do, they said they can't change the pond down there. They could expand the pond. They can make the pond bigger. They would lose some lots and they wouldn't be able to build as many homes. but there are ways for them to continue the development without impacting us in this fashion. Let me just check my notes, see if that's about everything. You know, I'm very concerned. There's been no mention tonight about removing the trees. And if they are going to remove all of those trees that have grown up in this natural green space, I would want to see that they have to replace the trees more closely with the number that they're going to remove. I think there's about 9 or 10, maybe a dozen at most, that are on the final landscaping plat for this change in the green space. And I don't believe that that's enough trees, because they're very tiny trees and most of them probably aren't going to survive more than a few months. I would be willing to go out and water these trees. It would be nice that if we could have, and I would love for y'all to come out and walk around this property. I think before you make this approval, it would be important for everyone to do a field visit and see what we're dealing with. And then maybe, you know, if it makes sense to put it in, let's put it in, but let's do it in a way that doesn't take away from our aesthetic. And then lastly, I'm concerned about the path of the dump trucks. It's been told to me through my neighbor when she saw someone out back looking at this spring, that the trucks are going to go to the south, that they're going to cross the creek and go out next to Trevor's house. Well, if they're going to cross the creek, that means they're going to have to fill that creek in. And if they fill the creek in, that's going to create exacerbated flooding conditions for those of us on the south end of this development. And I'm concerned about the outlet under Old Trail Run being plugged by debris during the construction process. So I would like to make sure that they don't go to the south and that they go to the north or the west through the undeveloped or the unbuilt lots of that horseshoe-shaped road that's to the west of the pond. And then I think one of my last conditions is to make sure that they apply water to this area of dirt. Today, I don't know if anyone was out on Old Trail Run or 33 and looked to the south or the west. They're running dump trucks as they bring in dirt for this latest development in Greenfield. You should have seen the dust storm as they were on these dirt roads. So I want to make sure when they're doing this excavation and running dump trucks, that there are water tanker trucks that are in there that are spraying this area down so that our patios and decks, our windows and our homes are not covered in dust, because this is literally right in our backyards. And the other thing that I would like the city engineer and the developer to consider is if this pond goes forward, is where the natural swale is, where the dedicated outlet, where the pipe outlet will be, not where the emergency spillway will be, but the piped outlet, which is on the southeast corner of the pond, nearest me at lot 44, is that swale going to be tall enough for the water? Because it's pushing all that water right out through a pipe. Right now, the water is kind of gently flowing through this area. Sometimes, you know, I say gently, that might not be fair enough, sometimes more quickly, but it's smoothed out through the area. This pipe is going to concentrate the water into one defined area. And I'm concerned because it's putting it closer to the backyard of my home, that will that swell be the appropriate level to contain the water and not end up having run over into our backyards more than it already is. With that, those are the things that come to mind. I appreciate your service and your time listening to me and all the others this evening. I genuinely do. I love Kearney. I'm passionate about where I live, as you can tell by my comments tonight, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton. Do you have anybody else, David?
Yeah, Dawn's still on, has her hand raised, but it doesn't look like she has an audio hooked up to it.
Dawn, if you'd like to speak, you please unmute yourself.
Kathy, we had a Deborah that messaged me and asked to speak.
I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, who is this?
Deborah James. I'm on lot 41 on Prairie Creek Drive. I live next to Dave Hink. And I just want to,
Deborah, could you state your name or your address for the record, please?
sorry, Deborah James, 2200 Prairie Creek Drive.
Thank you.
And I just want to echo what's been said already. I bought here in '09 and have also seen some major changes happen that we did not expect. So I'm in opposition of a pond for various reasons. The first one's an eyesore. You know, this doesn't look like the one currently, doesn't look like the one up on the hill behind the villas, which was done very nicely. So I'm afraid we're going to have the same situation here. If fishing's allowed, is there public access and where is it? And are people walking on private property to get to the pond? You know, that's a concern. I don't want people walking between my house and Dave's house to go fishing. So there's just a lot of concerns, and I know Seiler wants to build houses, but he needs to take into consideration a lot of other stuff that's going on here with this pond, and before he just, you know, bulldozes through, for the lack of a better word, and puts this in. I don't want it. I don't want mosquitoes. I don't want to look at a mud hole. The other one's an eyesore. I feel sorry for those people that have to look out their window at that. So with that being said, again, thank you. I know this is all tough. It's a city issue. I too have lived in Kearney a very long time, raised my kids here, and really don't want to see this happen. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Dawn, one more shot.
Yep, she's hooked the audio now.
Okay, Dawn, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, sorry about that, and I don't know what was the problem the first time, but I live at 203 Old Trail Run, and our house backs up to the Old Trail Run pond. We're the second house from the pond.
Dawn, what's your last name?
Stombaugh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And like Sean said, when she spoke, I've seen that water running really very close to their backyard and almost into their house and the back door. Even Jerry's yard too, it runs through there. The Wilkinsons, Trevor and Amanda, they had to do some foundation work on their land because of where the water ran through there one time with the storms, that they had to rebuild up the dirt through there and fix what the damage that did from the previous storms. And then if we put more water, another pond up the hill here, common sense tells you if we're having issues already now, we don't put more water in to solve problems. And like my husband says, my husband thinks that the developer is looking for some more free dirt to build, you know, the houses that are coming in now. And if we put in another pond, it could wash out the road that's down here and wash out our neighbors. And I can see where the developer wants, you know, thinking, you know, we'll just solve some problems up there, but just put another pond in and don't worry about down the road later, because, you know, as he's building more houses, as these issues start flaring up with down here on the Old Trail Run pond, the builder and the developer is going to be gone. He don't care, because once he got his money, we're left standing in water here. So it'd be on the homeowner. So, like I said, it's just common sense. You don't put more water up the hill to solve problems. And I agree, this is Green Meadows, not the fountain of metals. So that's all I have to say. And I don't approve of putting more ponds in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Like we've had everybody online?
Everyone else?
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and then if you would like to speak, yeah.
Okay, and we just wanted to appreciate everyone's feedback, so I wanted to provide some clarification to everyone and kind of a little bit, make sure things are We're not actually adding more water. That was a common issue we heard. There's no additional water. Yes, we're a pond holding the water, but it's not going to be additional rain runoff. The pond is actually going to be upstream and going to help capture the water and release it at slower rates so that the lady's backyard doesn't look like it does in a rainfall. It's actually going to help capture. The runoff that goes to it is not going to be more in any given rain event. We also have designed this pond for the 100-year rain event, which, like many people say, is very rare, but we do design, it is designed for the 100-year rain event. It is designed to hold the 100-year and release it in 72 hours. So instead of right now, when it rains, all that water is rushing right down to that culvert and through their yards, this pond will help capture that water and release it out at a slower rate so that it's going to be a lot less getting to that culvert, because we are going to be extending out the release rates to it. With that, we also heard some items about the existing pond and spillway on that. This pond is not designed in the same method as that spillway. The spillway on this pond is an emergency only. There is a culvert with a box that has got different stage outfall, and that will hold and release the water for the different rain events on that. The spillway on this pond is only if we had one of the really, really large, over the 100-year rain event, something crazy happen, then the spillway may go into function. It's there, and it's designed to operate and give it a defined rate, but it is not made as a primary outfall in any of the required rain design events out here. And the other one is that there was some concerns about the existing drainage in that area. Part of this effort would be, I mean, the reason we wanted to do this effort is not really for the dirt. Yes, it is a nice benefit, but it's really to help the existing conditions up there and the existing stormwater management. The developer was willing to do this to relieve the stormwater issues, the backyard videos you saw, and those items, and really just help conserve the overall stormwater management out here for the city, and to decrease the runoff so that we weren't getting the poor person down at the bottom of the hill, which is right now, has nowhere else to go, and the release rates are a problematic item, and we're up against a floodplain and an existing road culvert. So it's more for stormwater management overall, and to relieve the neighbors' yards and the drainage concerns, because we would be capturing it before it gets to their yards. And so the amount of water isn't really going to increase through here. That's what I want to make sure was clear, is it's, if something happened and the pond failed, that would be a different story, but it is designed and it should be engineered, just like any other pond is out there, should be inspected and things like that, but it is not designed in anything crazy methods. And part of the effort is we can and we will, when we get into final design, we will check the drainage and make sure that we've provided a defined spillway along that and a defined channel through that red path as we showed. And if we need to look at how that existing pond is spilling out too, we can make that as part of our effort to make sure that they are joining into an engineered swale that is defined and sized appropriately for these. That is part of an effort. When we're out there grading, we can work on that too. There's concerns there. But the big thing is just, this is more of an engineered need of stormwater management, and the water is going to stay the amount, but actually they should see some relief to their yards.
What happens in a large rain event when both ponds are releasing?
So we've modeled it all, and that's what we've kind of how we got into this pond needed to be created, because what's happening right now is that existing pond that went back in 2016 had to go in, because if that pond was not there when Meadows of Third Plat developed, the houses at the bottom would be flooding in the current event. So that existing pond is providing detention so that those homes down there aren't flooding. With that, you are, per standards around, you're required to hold back, there is certain release rates you can release at, and you can't release more than what existing. What we have done when designing this is we've looked at what the undeveloped existing was to help determine what should the release rates be on this pond, and kind of work from there. But typically when you're designing detention, your existing conditions is based on your existing release rates, and your proposed, once developed, isn't supposed to be over that. What has gone on with this pond is it developed and the release rates have increased because they used the downstream pond for it in previous phases. It was probably a matter of time, just the time of how it works, and now the developer's willing to go back in and solve these release rates and kind of go back in and fix it, and that's kind of what's going on with that. Right now, you've got one pond releasing, and you've got another whole 25 acres draining to it that is undetained and everything, so you're getting all that runoff at once, compared to if you put this pond in, then you get that acres runs to the pond and gets a slower release rate out to it. So it will help slow down your release rates out here, and then, like I said, it reduces the water at the culvert based on the runoff value by a third. It goes from 300 CFS to 200 CFS. By putting in this pond in the 100-year. So it will help slow down the release rates to them, which should hopefully help with backyard floodings also. What I would say. Anything else, or?
Just a quick question. So the big pond that's already there, like what size of pipe is coming out of that right now?
Which one?
The one that
The existing one?
just built, yeah.
That one's designed with a spillway outfall only. There is no pipe out of that one,
Okay. So,
to my belief, from what
so when the pond's full and it rains, it's gonna,
it goes through the 20-foot wide spillway is where that one goes, and that's what they all say. They see it going over the spillway. We are just looking at putting in a pipe, and from our experience, that has been a better outfall condition on ponds like this in single-family markets.
so the new pond, you're proposing a pipe and a spillway.
Yeah, we're proposing a pipe, which would be the primary outfall. It would be where all the rainfall events go. The spillway would be an emergency spillway. It's not designed for it to be used. The 100-year water surface elevation of the pond sits a foot below the spillway. The spillway is there in case this thing backs up so that it can safely overtop and not be overtopping the dam.
Well, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody because the city had to approve that pond the way it was built.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I'll point it.
And I don't know what went on.
But
We were not
what
out there.
I'm gonna say here is, as I've said, how many times have I said this? I'm not an engineer, but sometimes things just are common sense. When that pond's full, the same amount of water is gonna go over it that would have come down the hill if it were not there.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a release pipe that gets there, like you're proposing on this new one, and it 8 inches maybe, and
It'll be bigger than that, but
Okay.
it will be sized for it.
So it's cutting loose the water slower, I agree with that.
Slower.
That's the way this one should have been built, so you didn't have the pictures that we saw on.
Well, and some of it is you've got half the watershed that's just undetained right now, running at the pictures too, so.
Right.
It'd be even worse, if that existing pond wasn't there, it would be even worse, the pictures we saw. So, that existing pond is providing detention.
Until it gets full.
Well, with how even that is, they're designed to provide detention. They hold the 100-year, it trickles out for a certain amount and at a certain release rate. But yeah, if it gets overflowed and just doesn't.
Please do not talk to me about detention. If you would like to come up here when we're having a heavy rain, I'll take you around every detention pond that was designed
Yeah, no, I understand.
to work right in this town. I'll show you the one across from my store that shoots water across 92 Highway.
Yes, no,
Okay,
I
so I don't even want to, we had to fix that one. Literally,
but
we did. We
in our
engineered
experience,
that one ourselves to keep that from happening anymore. But that's what I'm saying is these things are designed and then they never do what they're supposed to do. Now, that's a detention pond. You have a retention pond.
so this is a retention.
Right.
That is providing detention. So it's gonna have a normal pool elevation and then a staged outfall.
So I agree with what you're trying to do in cutting the water loose slower. And I think that's a good idea. That should have been done with the other pond as well. I don't know if it can be fixed later, but that leads back to the same thing. The question that I asked earlier is who is responsible for this pond? And it always leads back to the homeowners association. Now, I can also go to lots of homeowners associations around town that are not functional anymore. So these folks are gonna have to really stay with it to make sure that the pumps work all the time, that they get pulled out every fall and they get put back in every spring. I mean, these are all things that, I'm familiar with development and I know how all this stuff works, so. But these are all facts that they're gonna have to deal with. And, I don't know, it seems like to me there's gotta be a compromise here. I think you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, but I understand why nobody wants that pond behind their house too, for the reasons that they've stated. So I don't know what the, I'm not gonna suggest anything because, again, I'm not an engineer. But it seems like to me that there's gotta be a way to keep that water from rushing down the hillside and, making it get to where it's supposed to get in, not in the volume that it has to, speed that it ends up getting there.
And that's kind of what, the retention
Right.
or detention.
You have the village of Greenfield fills up that pond, pushing it over and
Yeah,
underneath the street and getting that, so it's a triple.
It's a triple
We're
effect.
just trying to help it as much as possible.
right. So, I understand what you're trying to do. I think it's the right thing. I don't know if it's the right way. So I understand the folks' concern. I really do, and I know what you're trying to do, and I think it helps fix a problem. But it's kind of like bringing I don't know what the saying is, but you're bringing this in after the fact. So.
Yeah.
We've already done that once.
And why these got slipped through in the initial storm management out here, I don't know how. I mean, I don't know what went on at that point of how they got, missed in the initial storm management or what. I mean, I know the one you guys had to come back and permit, and now here we are again. Anything else?
Clearwater song, "We'll Stop the Rain." That's what we're talking.
Questions, or I've got comments.
I'm Garrett Tyler with GJM Development. Kent, you brought up a good point. I mean, I'm a contractor and builder and developer, so I hire Olson, which is well-known around the community, even in the Midwest, and you guys have an engineer as well. We're leaning on them and their expertise to come up with a solution, and I have all the faith in the world that they're gonna come up with something. Going back to that, I mean, why was this not a catch, or why could we not thought of a better solution? I don't know. That's why we're here now. We're wanting to continue to make Greenfield a prestige subdivision, as we have ever since we bought it 5 years ago. The one thing too, I hear a lot of concerns about the pond. I compare a pond like a pool. It's 50-50. Some people want a pool, some people don't. All I know is I'm a builder and I build around a lot of areas, and ponds and lakes increase value of homes. Not saying that's why we're doing it. I'm just saying by doing this, it's going to help retain water and also add value. Some owners like to say, no, it doesn't. It basically brings down the value of my house. I currently sell and buy, and everything that has a water view costs more. Now, granted, it has to, be resolved and engineered the right way to add the value. There was another thing that I marked down here, a fountain. Yes, so us as developer, we do want to, at our cost, put in this pond. Secondly, we would like to put in a fountain too, because it does, one, help with allergy and also gives it a nice view, an accent. The trees, I'm a little confused with the trees. I know the last time we did that pond, David, we had to put in, I want to say 6 or 8 additional trees because we took out trees. Our solution here is not to take out any trees. I mean, I have half the homeowners that call me because I run the HOA, and half of them want the trees completely demolished, and half of them want them stayed. I don't know what to do. I'm just caught in between. But I think if we do proceed with this and it does pass, having additional trees might help. I don't know. I think some people said that the trees are actually slowing down water. I would have to lean on an engineer to figure out if that is the case, because I know if tall grasses slow down the water, it gets more of like a swamp area. I mean, that's why we try heavily to try to mow the prairie grass. The prairie grass is pretty much gone because we had issues of that. So, like I said, I just want to reiterate that Jerry and I's goal towards EJM development and the Meadows of Greenfield is just keep adding value to this subdivision so we can keep it pristine like we are with the additional phases down the road, currently trying to go into zoning now. So I just want to just come up here and say that, and all we have is good intentions, and hopefully the city and the HOA knows that we're here and we'll do whatever it possibly takes to, keep making this better. So thank you for your time.
Have commission discussion?
Yes, I have a couple questions. David, all this up here to the north of that, that's unplotted homes up here?
To the north of the pond?
Yeah, right up in here.
No,
What is that?
if we zoom, if you look at the Google Earth here, so, Prairie Creek Drive, Old Trail Run, Foxtail Drive, and the cul-de-sacs, they're all standard single-family lots. Greenfield Point is this looped road that you see on Google Earth. That's kind of in that area you were pointing at, and those are villas, similar to, this initial phase of villas up.
So this in here is already all developed?
Not all the way. The Google Earth map is actually pretty accurate on the number of lots. So I'd say they still have maybe a little less than half of those villa houses to construct.
Okay, so when that is developed even more, there's gonna be even more water down there.
Well, Julie's probably a little better to answer that question. It's still the same water.
Well, anytime
That falls out the side, yeah, but
when you get
there'll be,
water.
yeah, you'll have a hard surface that there's more,
Yeah, so you'll
runoff.
have rooftop, you will have, we've looked at it as fully developed, you will have a little bit more water than what's out there today, not much for those couple lots, it's minor when you put a rooftop, but there will be, as those roofs finish, there will just be a slight increase from today's condition out there, but not much, I would say, and it's more just that you've put the rooftop on it and not the house lot anymore, but. And that's been looked at in our design too.
Okay, and then David, has our engineer looked at this?
They are looking at it.
They're looking at it now?
They're looking at it, yeah. We received their modified, storm report last Wednesday, and they need time to review those.
All right.
What we're doing today is whether or not having a pond at this location, makes sense from a plan amendment standpoint.
Well, and I'm just speaking for myself, until I saw the city's engineer, what they have to say about it, it'd be hard for me to approve anything. And I'm speaking for myself. And number two, another question is, when I saw in that video, I sure saw a lot of water sitting there along those lots that are in the 90s.
Chuck, real quick, I mean, as a builder, John, you mentioned this, that some of those lots down there should have never been walkouts. Walkouts, everyone wants, to walk out of the house, this is easier, more windows, stuff like that. There's some where it should have been in daylight where allowed that yard to kind of go up. The overspill that went in those yards, if you go back to that video, this stagnant water is sitting there too. I would really like to lean on Olson and kind of figure out, I can't go on the owner's property, but up to their property forward, maybe try to,
Bring it.
Yeah, as much as possible, but depending on how the size of the culvert and the intake in it, that I'm gonna have to lean on the engineer. But yes, we would like to address that, but once again, as builders, at that time, that developer approved a drawing that allowed a walkout to go there where it should have been a daylight, because it would only helped out the water to fall back onto that property. I'm not trying to throw your shoulder under the bus or anything. And I've experienced that myself, before, which, once you do it, you're held to those standards, you can't do anything else.
But the city approved it.
It's there now, we have to try to address what we can to help it.
Yeah, but the city had nothing to do with that. You just go off of building code. It's the developer that should have analyzed at that time to say, no, you need to put a daylight in and then put a walkout, and then it goes to the city for approval. It would only help out the backyard to have more slope, so it doesn't just fall back on the property and be stagnant.
And I also, I understand a lot of the property owners of what they're looking at and what their concerns are. But I do believe eventually we gotta do something to slow it down there. If it can be slowed down, you might have that run, but I don't think the run's gonna be as wide as you're seeing now. But like I said, it'd be hard for me to approve this without the city engineers telling me what they think. And that's just my opinion. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would have to agree with Chuck that I really like to see what our engineers have to say. Kent's not wrong when he says that we have approved retention ponds and drainage and all sorts of things, and for some reason we think we're doing the right thing and we end up with water problems. And so that's very frustrating. So I would like to be able to rely on our engineers before I make a decision. I think the Silers are doing an excellent job in Greenfield, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to mitigate these issues. I understand that this changes the plan for the people who bought property that was overlooking grass. I understand that, and I don't know how to resolve that issue. Aesthetics, certainly I would like to see maybe what this pond is going to look like aesthetically a little bit more. Public access, I think, we've talked about fishing ponds and stuff, but if I'm looking at this plan, there's no real access to that without walking through somebody's backyard, and that's certainly not acceptable. We're not in the business of taking private property and making it public access. So I think that's an issue. I don't think you can sell it as a fishing pond if nobody has real access to it. So at this point, I don't think that I would want to vote on it without seeing what our engineers have to say.
I'd agree with that too. And we've got two issues. We've got from 43 on up to 39 that are going to lose their grassland. It's the 44, 45, and 46 that got the water issue. So, it's just something that we have to see which one is the bigger issue. And I think if the pond was built, go back to the very original pond with the earthwork, the stonework, at least something that looks better. I don't know if that's feasible though.
Before I would be comfortable voting on it, I would want, the city engineer's feedback, and I would want to actually see what the pond is going to look like. I also think, I do vaguely understand how the pond helps the water thing, but I think it's a really hard thing for people to understand, because it is just more water. How high are the sides gonna be? Like, how much extra water is it going to? And as I watch it fill, even I'm old enough to remember the flood of '93, right? Those 100-year floods happen way more often than 100 years, it seems like. So I think there would need to be more sort of almost education around how it really is going to help retain the water. Because right now it just seems like you're gonna put a bunch of water there, and then there's gonna be more water, and then I know that's not how it really works, but it seems like you're just gonna add water, and then the whole pond comes down, which isn't how it works, but it's how it feels when it's your house with water coming at it. Because probably every one of us has had the moment with the water in the house, and it's one of the worst experiences as a homeowner, so.
I will make a motion to table.
Until September 13th?
I'm sorry, what?
Until September 13th?
Yeah, until next meeting, sorry.
Or until the engineers can.
Do you anticipate that we could see the report within the next month?
Oh, but before yes, yeah. Yep, I know they've started working on it and looking at it.
And we can provide, Sonia, Julie, some 3D renderings or something, maybe kind of see what that first pond looks like compared to the new one, and give you an idea. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a motion to table this item until September 30th, or 13th, sorry.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item on the agenda, under new business and public works and salt line and site plan. David, do you have a report?
Yes, and, oh, yeah. Can I just yank it, or should I?
Yank it.
Okay. All right. Go on. I think we'll just move the aerial map, maybe. And I can share my screen. Sorry, I moved so slow, everybody. Okay. City of Kearney Public Works Department. Donnie couldn't be here today. He's out of the office. It's gonna be me that's here. City's proposing a conditional use permit for a new salt storage building, a 3,200 square foot salt storage building at the Public Works Facility at 502 East 19th Street. We already store salt on that property. We can't store very much in the winter. The department would like to store more so they can be, one, be a little more responsive in winter events, and then two, if we get a couple events backed up against each other, then we have the extra salt that they can respond appropriately. Public Works Department's been at the property for about 50 years. It was originally a sanitary sewer plant. Jim said maybe in the 70s it was a sewer plant. I think the city acquired the property around 72.
Back over here.
Yeah, and then the sewer plant had been moved down Glenside Road, but by then, our street department had already been out there on the property, and everybody knows that we've got our Public Works group, but we also have recycling and the brush drop-off site at that property. The proposed building would include a 4-foot concrete wall and white tension fabric covering over an arched steel frame, which is similar to many other salt storage buildings. There are a couple of pictures that were in the staff reports, and I can share that too if anyone wants to look at that or some further discussion on that. The overall height will be 31 feet tall, so that they can have equipment inside the building scooping and piling salt, so we can try and store as much as we can inside. Vehicle and person doors will face the south, away from the winter weather, which is kind of by where the gates are to the existing Public Works facility. The driveway, if you want to look at the map, I'll point out the new building would be in this location, adjacent to the original street barn building that we have out on the property. The existing driveway that comes in branches. If you go to the right, you go up to the recycle center. If you go to the left, you go to the Public Works. You would go to the left and part way up that direction, the driveway would be extended to the east side of the existing building, and then the new building would be in that location. I could probably unshare, and then we'll share the agenda packet. And I have a location map in the agenda packet. And I can't guarantee it's to scale, but I tried to do a pretty good job. So we have the Public Works property outlined in the black line. You can see the recycle center up at the northeast part of the property, the brush drop-off at the north end, and then I've highlighted in gray a new driveway. I have outlined in black a new building. So that new building would be on the west side of the recycle center drive, well within required setbacks along 19th Street and to the east. Actually, to the east, there's an open space tract along Stone Lake Drive that's owned by the Stone Lake Homes Association as well. This building is about 85 feet from the recycle center driveway. The closest house, which is the first house on Stone Lake Drive, would be about 250 feet away. And then to the northeast, the closest house on the, I would say the west side of Stone Lake Drive is over 350 feet away. Back to the building again, it would be a 31-foot tall building. The ground sits lower than the recycle center drive, so the bottom about 10 to 12 feet of the building will not be visible over the recycle center drive. There's a little hump to the east too. The property line is probably the highest point. It's 1 or 2 feet above the recycle center drive. The Stone Lake Homeowners Association, I believe Kim Murphy is here on behalf of the HOA. They submitted a comment letter requesting an abundance of screening, including trees and shrubs. The city planned to do some additional plantings along the east side of either the building or the east side of the recycle center drive. We haven't made a specific landscape plan for that. We just know that that's something we plan to do as part of this construction project. Staff has not been contacted by nearby homeowners before tonight's meeting. I don't know if there are other neighbors that are here today, aside from the HOA representative. I guess we can go to the pictures. This is a copy of the site plan that the city's engineer has prepared, and in that you can see the gray represents the new driveway. They added a turning movement for a truck to drop off, would drop off salt, and trucks that we would load into our vehicles. So we want to make sure that they can turn around in that area. They've got the building, and then you've got the sloping. Other parts of the improvements, they'll add a couple of street lights along this new drive as well. I don't think they are marked. I don't see them on the plan. I'm going to try and zoom in. But they would be along the east side of the driveway so that the fixtures face towards the west to keep light from spilling over to the east. You'll also see there's a new fence. We'll expand the security fencing to go around the new improvements to keep people out in the evenings and when we don't have workers present on the site. There is floodplain along the property. Maybe I'll zoom out here. But the floodplain's primarily along the tributary. It's called Tributary 16 in the floodplain maps. It's an unnamed tributary. You can see the improvements. This would be the Public Works building and the driveway that we have. So this is a low area. We're staying out of that floodplain area, so a floodplain permit would not be required. And then these are sample pictures of the building. So we see the 4-foot wall. We see the tension fabric roof. And then on the inside, you see that it does allow light in. On a nice day, it does allow light in through the fabric as well. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for the storage facility with a couple of conditions. One, submit revised drawings if necessary prior to the Board of Aldermen meeting. Submit building permit application prior to construction, which we do for city buildings also. Generally, the board will waive fees that the city would have to pay back to the city, but that would be included in that. And then 3, standard, developed site in compliance with all codes, conditions, requirements, plans of payment of fees and taxes. Of course, the city doesn't pay taxes related to that, but I didn't want to mess with changing that condition. This application will be before the Board of Aldermen. There is a public hearing tonight. There is a conditional use permit, so you want to open up for members of the audience to speak, and then we'll look for raising of hands on online if we have some additional people here today for that.
Thanks, David. All right, we'll open up the public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Murphy?
Kim Murphy, 1509 Rockwater Lane here in Kearney. My personal property lies just outside the contact area, but as president of the HOA, I have received the notice and tried to notify the people that live around there that aren't directly, we're all going to drive by it, but to try to gather input. I was glad to see that it is a proposed salt barn and not a salt bar, as is on the bottom of the drawing.
Is that on,
the updated one on the bottom?
which one? Show me. Oh, it's on theirs? Okay,
Down
cool.
here,
I can
says
tell.
it was a salt
Engineer.
bar. I did submit in advance because I was not sure I would be back from a trip to South Dakota for my outlaws family reunion. My in-laws family reunion. Our concern obviously is adequate screening, trees and shrubs. The proposed barn seems to be a good idea and reasonably located since the trucks are there that will be getting the salt. I don't think that is a very fair representation of what a salt dome is going to look like, especially one that's 30 feet high. That looks like it might be 20 feet at best. If I might approach the group, I have a couple pictures. I actually caught this on the way home from South Dakota. I have two.
Trip on that cord.
Whoa. I have two of them. I'll start one at each end. I remember being on this committee, and you didn't always get it by the time the vote came.
Yeah.
That's a salt dome. And before I leave, I'll leave you some screening ideas, and I'll share that background too. That salt dome is in Nebraska along a divided 4-lane highway that the neighbors are all manufacturing facilities and car repairs and sheet metal shops. They don't face houses. And as the University of Southern California said, and I don't want to misquote Southern Cal, because I was looking at what these things are going to look like. And they talk about, regardless of what color they are, during the day, a tension fabric roof is a solid color that can be seen for miles away. And we're just concerned because at a 30-foot height, that's going to be about 15 to 20 feet above the ground level that's out there now. And if you drive down Stone Lake now, you don't even see the maintenance building. It's below all of this. This will be at least 15 to 20 feet above that, 67 feet long and white. That's wider than most of the houses in our development. And that's a concern also. The existing chain link fence is also going to come up and be more visible as it's necessary, but it's going to be more visible. That's why we're very concerned about the appropriate buffering with trees. If you look at the two other pictures, again, I just stumbled across those, that we stayed in a small or a non-national chain hotel when we were up there. And one picture is marked on the back from street and one is marked from lot. They're actually shot from the street. The one that says street is looking at the two-story hotel is on the other side of that. And from the one that says from lot is looking out from the parking lot across a 150-foot commercial lot at a Baumgars store, which is kind of like a Tractor Supply. It's very big. It's got a lot of stuff out there that's all farm country up there, all corn country. So they did a nice job. And to try to keep this as brief as possible, a couple of the other people here, and not to keep them from talking, but in case I can cover their concerns too. One is the birds. They have the first house on the north side of Stone Lake there, and they planted a bunch of arborvitaes to buffer the driveway that they put in to park their camper on. They put them in, they were about 6 feet tall. They're about 12, 15 feet tall, and it hasn't been very many years. And they're pretty thick too. The other is Beth Schoening, who lives back down around on Stone Lake. Her property, I would best describe as at the far end.
You wanna do the map?
No,
Let me pull
yes,
up the
if
map.
you would just, please, because I don't want to misrepresent where she's.
Can I just use this aerial map, maybe?
Yes.
Will that,
Oh,
does
no.
it go enough?
Yes, that'll get it, and I don't have a red pointer. I want to make sure. Right, Beth?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is hers. We have a white fence, a vinyl fence that I believe the city, I don't know the whole history because it was there before I moved there. I believe the city was involved in putting this there to buffer these people from this. It doesn't really buffer the Jardaks and the Shonings from this, and also this as it's going to be. So we'd like to have something included in consideration to expand that. But our main concern, as you can see, is down here. This is going to be 15 to 20 feet higher than this level and bigger than most houses in our neighborhood. And I think the neighbors deserve to have it well buffered quickly and maintained, because like I think it was raised in the earlier hearing, sometimes trees get planted. They die in 2 or 3 years, and there's nothing that makes them come back up. It always drove me nuts too when I had the opportunity to serve here. But hopefully that, I think I've covered everything. Yeah, extend the white vinyl fence, added that, and also to the visibility issue, not only to the east, but to the north. And if anybody, if you have any questions of me, I'd like to say, my house isn't technically in the 185 feet, but our neighborhood is, and the HOA is, and that's why I'm, excuse me, that's allergies from South Dakota for 4 days. Anyway, forgive my voice. Anything I can answer for it. If not, I'll sit down and let them talk for themselves. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this side. Well, I don't really appreciate it. No, I take that back. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Rick Berg, and we are at 1704 Stone Lake, which is, as Kim alluded to, we're the first house on the west side of Stone Lake Drive. And when I first heard of the salt, we're calling it salt
Storage building.
facility. My concern is, it's not specific to that, but when we bought our house, we knew the recycle center was there. And I spoke to a couple of people in the past saying, you know, we knew what we were getting into. But as the city has grown, the usage has grown. And our big issue's been the debris, the yard waste is really at times pretty obnoxious. And the site, you know, I no pun, but I have a bird's eye view of that. It's right, that's my backyard basically. And so, as Kim alluded to, I planted some arborvitaes when we parked our RV. We got permission to do a driveway, and we wanted to buffer because some neighbors had some concerns about it. I also planted some along that white fence back there to try to buffer a little bit with the dumpsters. And that's my point today is, if we're gonna look at this center, can we address or at least throw it up to maybe doing something with the dumpsters? And when I say that, meaning can they be relocated to the west of the existing building? Or maybe plant some trees in front of those, because it's really, difficult to have to look at those. Plus, the debris that blows out of them when the wind kicks up and lands in your trees and that kind of thing is kind of a pain too. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that existing building, I don't know what it was for in the past, but really it serves the purpose of the person that's there on Friday and Saturday when people come in to utilize the recycle center. It's really pretty bad looking. It needs a little dressed up, and some coat of paint would help it a lot. So I just want to throw it out. It's kind of an eyesore back there, and if we're going to look at the salt storage facility, if they could look at the whole center in general and see what we can do to kind of dress it up a little bit, it would be appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go real quick. My name's John Kaiser. I'm at 1503 Rockwater Lane, just behind, just right next to that area that he was mentioning before, and just reiterate that potentially moving those, it'd be really nice, because I probably spend about 15 minutes every time I mow picking up that waste, so that kind of sucks. But the biggest thing that I have a problem with is when they pick it up, and I can only imagine that it's going to be the same with the salt. This is what I hear about in between 3 and 5 a.m. every morning. So my kid is about 2, and we sleep with a noise machine in her room, so that way she doesn't have to hear that, but she'll still come in at 3 and 5 a.m. for them to pick that stuff up. And at minimum, I don't know if we can change that to not at 3 or 5 a.m. That's pretty rough on me. Also with the salt, can we make sure the backup, or have a drive-through one? That way we don't have to hear that backup sensor right there next to it. And then also during the construction time, if it's during the day at 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. if it does get constructed. I know those are all things we can do, potentially mitigate that, and then also some stormwater, looked into that, because you're gonna have a new driveway, and there's also a lot of water that runs off of that, so that can also be looked at. But if we're gonna make an eyesore, can we make an eyesore in one area of that area? That's the best way to say it, if that's all possible. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, and I'm Beth Schauning, 1501 Rockwater Lane. And as Kim mentioned, I'm the house that goes all the way back behind the backyard is all the way behind the recycling center, and everybody else has the privacy fence. I've got a wire fence that catches the trash, some of it, that has to be picked off, and half of it comes into my yard. So I would appreciate something to cover that up. And another thing, it would be awesome to consider the city, when they come on our snow days, I would leave at 5:45 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and I see the trucks have been there, and they turn right out of the neighborhood. And sometimes when I come home at night, they've not even hit our neighborhood. If we're gonna be part of that whole issue, it'd be nice if we could be addressed first, rather than the last of the city when they're coming back to the end.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, David, do we have anybody online?
There's a Deborah online, but she doesn't have her hand raised.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, if not, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and have commission discussion.
I have my hand raised.
Mr. Porter?
David, I'm gonna go up here, I'm gonna ask you something. I can't tell by the topo, I'm looking at that on my phone, and I can't, so,
Do you want me to,
again, I wanna tell you that I am not an engineer, But, did you ever think about putting it back here?
That gets into floodplain behind that building.
Well, this does not appear to be as long as that.
I don't think it's scale, that's 60.
So, your building is a one-way entrance, and so I'm sorry this will screw up your drive-through idea. But why couldn't you come in this entrance and just come straight back to that? From what I can tell on the topo, this will lose 5 feet from here to here. So that's another 5 feet that won't show in this quite decorative building that you're wanting to build. And if you're good at that way, it also turns the profile of just the front towards the neighborhood instead of that big plastic thing. And there's some things that you could probably do with the front of it, paint it purple for God's sakes, maybe. I don't know. Go Bulldogs on it. I mean, I don't know where this, I don't know what this tree line is, and like I said, I don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna move this.
Floodplain is.
Yeah, there's,
But from what I can tell, you gotta go by these totals.
yeah, we're getting off.
About 5 feet.
Are you talking here? You're talking
about, well, if you take that building and put it right, just pivot it 90 degrees and put it right here.
and try to get a drawing where, layout where you can drive up here and come through.
You've got an entrance right here, just come straight into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of slope there. With this driveway setup, it's a flatter condition for.
Put some salt on it when they're done. I don't know, I'm just trying to solve problems here.
Yeah, I understand.
I know none of these folks wanna look at this white plastic thing, and I don't blame them, so.
I'm gonna switch to the.
Change the profile, and you paint the front of it a different color, maybe green, or maybe, I don't know, something other than bright white, so that it.
There are other colors that they can do. There's a,
Just
I
kidding.
would also say, as someone who drives down 19th to get to my house, I don't want to drive down 19th, which is a beautiful road in my opinion, and see a big, huge, like, and I don't even live in that neighborhood. But I do also see the purpose and the need for it, and I really love when they put the salt down,
mhm.
so that I can drive.
And the best location in town is really that, because that's where we have our crews, that's where our street department is located, that's where our vehicles are located.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Again, just like what we just talked about, I don't think anybody's considering other possible alternatives to what could be done. That's the easiest thing to do, so boom.
Basically, what you're saying, instead of it being north and south, go east and west.
Yeah, just take that building and put it right here at the end of that building.
Well, we'd come this way.
And you can come in this driveway.
Be less noticeable from, Stone Lake Drive.
What's the width on that building?
64 by 50, I think the number.
What's the length then?
64.
60, and it's 54 in the front?
64 long, 50 wide.
Could you bring that Google map back up, please?
Maybe.
I think it looked like it was
Find it.
wide,
Yeah,
but it is
Just for
long.
reference,
Well, you can't do a drive-through. That can't happen because they've got to be able to dump the salt and pile it up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of slope, once we get around that back, once we get back around here in this area, there's quite a bit of there's actually a lot of slope issues.
I know. I'm not the engineer.
Yeah.
Not either, so
That's right.
Asking someone to
That's
look
right.
at it, though. Tell me why you can't do that.
Did you quote, can we still speak or did you?
If you make it very brief.
Very brief.
Very brief.
I just wonder, in looking at these proposals, could we get a drawing that actually shows it a little better than the sketch before you finalize with that option, the two options, to see what it would look like?
I can try and see if our engineer, I mean, if we need to, if the board wants to do that, I can have the engineer comment on why one location might work better than the other, or
I just like.
how a second one could work if,
How it
what the
would look.
ramifications would be if it were to be relocated.
I think we're struggling to get an idea of what it would actually look like. And I think that might make a difference on where it's located.
Somebody with, a little bit of computer knowledge should be able to make that happen just really quick, I think.
Pictures worth 1,000 words.
Is that the chain link fence that we've talked about, that we can see the outline of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'd need to enclose the, just like we do the rest of the public works facility, we need to enclose that
Right.
area.
But it could be enclosed, you could butt it up there and it wouldn't, that could be the boundary of it.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have to have any space around it.
Right, yeah, or enough room that maybe somebody could mow in between the fence and the building, but there would not be very much. There's not a need for a huge fenced-in area.
Or would you even need a fence?
I think for safety, I think the department wants to have a fence around those improvements to protect against vandalism or theft.
David, how tall is that white vinyl fence?
I don't know, I imagine it's probably 6 foot maximum. The vinyl fence, 6 foot?
Yeah, it's 6 foot. My understanding, I don't know if it's true or not, the homeowners and the city went in on 50/50 on that fence.
I don't know, I'd have to get confirmation
That's what I-
from
that's
Jim
what I heard.
on if
That's
there
when
was
it was the
participation
developer.
there.
It was the developer that,
Was it?
the homeowners didn't, the people who live in the development now didn't control it until about 4 years ago. That was there when I moved there 11 years ago. It was when it was being developed, not.
Well, I'd like to see the city be a good neighbor, and it sounds like we have a few issues, maybe not tied to this particular thing, but I certainly would like for us to be good neighbors, and if we have trash issues in the area, then we need to figure out a way to mitigate those. But I like the idea of looking at another option. If we can lessen the amount of the building that we see, that's great. We're a tree city, or at least we used to be, and so planting trees should be what we do very best. And so I'd like to see us have a plan that incorporates some nice tall trees. I was actually talking about that. I don't know how many of you remember when we had to do the concrete plant, and we fought with them to put the berms in, we fought with them to put trees in, and when they put the trees in, they were about this tall. And they're finally mature after, 15 years or whatever. So, I'd like to see us just be proactive and plant some fast-growing tall trees to help screen or plants or vines or something, so that we're screening that from the public.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me why we look at this and we knew it wasn't gonna be popular, so what can we do different so that we don't have to, force things down people's throats? So, anyway.
So should we table this until?
I'll move the table, that's my job tonight,
I'll second.
till the next meeting.
Okay, September 13th.
Be specific.
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Aye. Carries. This September 13th. There will not be a public hearing at that time, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for
No.
your time and consideration. Appreciate it.
I expect the board will probably table the public hearing next Monday until after our recommendation comes from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda then is Turley Hills final plat.
I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down since we're already here on the packet. Maybe if I can grab it correctly. There we go. Mr. Turley has hung out with us all evening, been very patient.
We should have made you first tonight.
You can see how things work. Mr. Turley proposes the Turley Hills final plat. It's actually an existing 6-acre tract. The properties around it have already been platted. This one was out kind of by itself. Our city codes do require that a property be platted, for reasons to establish rights of way and or easements for properties. So we're going through this process. We actually did go ahead and issue a building permit to him prior to today, knowing that this would come through for board consideration. The property was rezoned to RR Rural Residential in 2012. What he's proposing to do is plat this 6-acre lot. It's consistent with that zoning. City water and sanitary sewer are not available to the property. It's south of the Fishing River. District 6 is the water provider, and there will be a private system on site that gets permitted through the Clay County Health Department. Staff recommends approval of the final plat with the following conditions: submit a revised final plat if necessary, pay the parkland fee with the building permit, which has already been done, record the plat within a year of alderman approval, and that will happen as well, and then, of course, develop the site in compliance with all city codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees and taxes. This will be forwarded, like all final plats do, to the Board of Aldermen at the meeting next week. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Turley's in the audience if anyone has any specific questions for him.
Thank you, David. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this is inside the city limits, right?
Yes.
I thought we were trying to do away with large acreage plots being developed.
Well, as I mentioned, everything around it had already been platted, and it is zoned this size of lot. Right, yeah. If they were to subdivide, they would need, I would say a subdivision would need to be really small lots, and we don't have city sewer available out there at this time.
All right.
So it makes sense, it's an existing piece of ground. There's actually a house already on the property, and they are converting that to a guest house, and they're building a bigger house on the property. So, it's really an existing lot, and we're just platting it because our codes say you've got to plat it, because we need to establish that right-of-way that's out there and utility easement.
You answered it, when everything around it's on large acreage.
Right. It's down there. If you go south, the Odell properties and are you familiar? I can pull up the map if you want to. It's just past Riverbend. Yeah, just past Riverbend, but on the east side. Okay.
The Shenny to Wood.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
You're not going to table this one.
As I say, if you want it tabled, you can talk to me. So somebody else got to do this.
I make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir, for your patience.
And we'll see you next Sunday nights, the board meeting. You can attend via Zoom to that meeting, or you can come in person, just like tonight.
Obviously, was because I not have my audio.
Yep. Either way is fine.
Plus, it was informational. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time and service.
Thank you. There being no old business, the next item on the agenda is the enclosures, information, commission discussion. Anyone have anything to share with the class?
I have something I'd like to talk to the board about on this houses down here. I think they're great, everything's fine on it, but I think we need to look at our off-street parking ordinance for those compared to, regular housing. We have a square footage for housing that is smaller than what's there, that has to have 4 parking spots. This down here is larger than that, than our family homes, and we only require 2. I think it's something the board needs to look at. I'm just throwing it up there to see what everybody else thinks.
Do you count the ones in back as parking? Aren't they gonna still, I wasn't here, so
Yeah, so they had 1-car driveway, or 1-car garage, and then they had a strip, actually there were 8, one for the same number of units. They added parking spaces in an off-street parking lot, basically.
So you got the garage, does that count as one?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you got 2 in front, so that's 3?
No.
None in front.
Yeah, none in front. There was,
None in front.
some parking stalls. Now, if you look at the plan,
Not gonna happen.
when you enter off Clark Street, all the garages are off to the left side. So between the drive aisle that you come in and the back of the building, there's a little bit of space where if you had a really compact vehicle, you could probably use that as a parking space if you needed to. But it's not the length of it wasn't like a standard, it wasn't a standard 20-foot long, so that could also be counted as a space.
Behind the garage?
Yeah, directly behind the garage.
I thought it was 20 or 21 feet.
Originally, when they had the 3-story, when they came back and modified the plan to reduce the stories down to 2, they shrunk the square footages down to 15.
See, I wasn't here, I didn't realize, so now it's...
2-story now.
It's 2-story, but I'm more concerned about the parking.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have the garage is considered one, and there's not one behind the garage that's considered another one?
No, it's, the drive aisle that comes in, they added 8 parking stalls on the south side of that. Yeah, okay, yeah.
That basically is still 2.
It's still 2, they just reduced the size of the unit.
Well, so, the folks across the way park nose in to that building. How are you gonna keep them from not nosing into this?
Where do you mean?
So they're not gonna be on
Street?
Washington Street.
Yeah, there wasn't on street.
Parallel will be the only thing on Washington Street. This is all coming in from behind.
They can still park
Yeah, I
parallel.
understand that. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
they-
You're not counting any parking on Washington Street.
Correct, yeah, we're not.
And you say there's not gonna be any.
They can.
Not as part of the plan, they weren't adding on the street.
Don't count it, you're gonna allow.
You just weren't counting it, but yeah, somebody could park
Say, how the
on
hell
public
do you gonna
parking.
keep that from happening?
Yeah, it's public parking, people could park out on the street
Yeah,
if they want.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
guy across the street, they've been nosed in parking there for as long as I can remember,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay,
But it'll be parallel, not nose in, it'll be parallel
it
parking.
will be parallel, okay.
Yeah,
But you're just not counting that as part of the parking?
right,
Okay.
right. The parking calculation only included the on-site parking, nothing off the site.
All right, well, I didn't catch it, they caught that, I read through because I wasn't here, but I still think the board needs to look at your parking situation on townhouses.
And in that P district, if you read through the staff report, you can kind of read into it that P district allows flexibility in setbacks and parking, and the board establishes that parking. So in the first meeting, when we had the 3 stories and everybody said, well, I'm worried about parking, that was an appropriate conversation to have. And the board could say, we feel we need more parking with this project and can approve it as part of the P zone. The representatives they had were saying, well, your multifamily only requires 2. Yeah, it does. But This was a rezoning type of situation, and so there could have been additional requirements that the board put
Well, what
onto
happens
that
when
project.
it's not a rezoning and we're in the same situation and then we've got nothing? I think that's maybe what.
That's what I'm saying, is we need to look for the next one.
How do we-
Well, when we do that, then you will see that the board wasn't in those situations. It won't necessarily be a situation where we're trying to reduce setbacks. We're trying to have units that are larger. You know, your typical apartment units aren't going to be 1,900 square feet or even 1,500 square feet. They're gonna be a lot smaller than that, and so that, you know, a two parking space, project may be just sufficient.
Two-bedroom.
Right, for a two-bedroom
yeah.
unit or one bedroom unit, yeah.
But
This
is
is
there-
kind of a special, it was a special zoning that,
Yeah, but what can we do if we have another one like that?
like the townhomes,
Yeah.
I think it'd be
Where the board feels like they should have more off-street parking or more parking.
in that P zone, I think it's appropriate to try and work out some additional.
We don't need-
Or don't approve certain, I don't wanna use the word variance, but a relaxation of setbacks, for example, or
Yeah, but
something.
P zoning says that that's okay for P zoning, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We can.
So do we need
But-
to change the P zoning in that?
It doesn't,
Change anything.
yeah, it's not, the P zone doesn't mean it's guaranteed. It means it's a review by the board, and if the board feels it's appropriate, well, then the board can grant that flexibility as part of their approval.
Well, maybe I'm a little confused. If I'm being a little confusing, I'm sorry.
It's okay, no.
I thought I remember them saying that's what was in the P zoning, that they only had to have two per unit.
No, they said that statement, but they were looking at what the standard zoning requires as far as number of parking spaces for a
And
dwelling.
that's what I'm trying to get at. Can we change that citywide? Like, those are in, we got it passed how it should be, that's really great. But we desperately need more multifamily housing in Kearney. We could very easily come up against that again, and it's not gonna be a P zone, it's gonna be some other, where then we have to, I mean, you're saying, oh, use something else, but well, how do we make it so that's like, because what is the rule? It's multifamily and it's not square footage, right? For the parking space? You mentioned it that night, what the rule is for parking spaces.
Like the size of a parking space?
Well, how
many you have to
have.
Oh,
Spaces.
yeah, 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit in a multifamily
And what's the rule
project.
for home?
For your house,
Houses.
yeah, your single-family house is, 4 off-street parking spaces, 2 of which can be in a garage. And actually, maybe it says 2 garage spaces are required so that we don't have one-car garages.
I'm just wondering if we can change it so it's based on square footage and not single-family versus multifamily housing, because some multifamily housings are, I mean, those were gonna be 1,500 something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that would, I mean, I think that's what you're trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
But to be clear, P isn't a zoning. P is an overlay district, so they're not really, it's not really P zoning. It's, the zoning is whatever it is, and then there's a P overlay district, and when we do those P overlays, that's when we can control more, give and take about how.
So if we wanted to, we could have demanded that they had more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, but that, now we've
And I
done
think
it.
in a way, that's kind of what happened, because they came back with a revision. They saw what the discussion was. They reduced the size of those units, and reduced the height of the buildings to get that comfort level with the board that, hey, these 2 parking spaces for this size of a unit in the downtown is appropriate.
But to your point, maybe it makes more sense to even look at multifamily based on square footage, because a 3-bedroom unit is probably gonna have 3 drivers. You know, that was my concern when we were talking about these 1,900 square feet units, was those large units. You could get 3 drivers sharing rent, and very easily, and then not have a parking space for that 3rd person, which is when we started talking about the on-street parking. so, and that they had talked about, curbs and all that on Washington, which would have been wonderful. But
Something to think about, I thought, but, just seemed funny to me that we have single-family houses and they're only, 11,000 square foot? What's the maximum?
I think the minimum, you mean minimum. Minimum is, I think it's 1,100 square foot.
1,100 square foot?
But
we're requiring 4 parking spots.
our average, though, is over 2,000 square foot per house.
Yeah, now it is, but I remember when they built all them right there, right off Southbrook Parkway and right into, when you first turn onto Southbrook Parkway, all of those in there are 11,000, or 1,000 square foot, whatever they were.
Yeah. And if you add second floor, split level or something, I think it goes up to 1,300, I believe, but.
Okay. Anything else?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Not table of adjournment.
That's the next. Perfect. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
You don't want it tabled.